Scent Podcast.
Hey everybody, it's Matthew. Welcome back to another Scent Spotlight, the podcast where we're highlighting the creators who are doing the most amazing things on and off of the Scent platform. My guest is GiantSwan, the virtual reality artist based out of Melbourne. Swan has an amazing history. He's been creating virtual art for a number of years. First off, doing a lot of music-inspired work. And then recently, from December of last year, he's been creating a lot of rare digital art over on Super Rare and Known Origin. And his work is absolutely incredible. GiantSwan and I, we speak about his creative journey from selling horse products in a corporate atmosphere to joining his favorite band, touring around Australia, creating virtual art, to minting his first works over on Super Rare and Known Origin. GiantSwan is an amazing creator. I had a blast talking with him. He's an awesome storyteller. And the way that he framed his work as creating dreams for people to experience, it's something that will stay with me heading forward. So, without further ado, I hope you enjoy my chat with the virtual reality artist, GiantSwan. Okay, and we're live. This is Matthew, and I'm back with another Scent Spotlight. This week, I'm super stoked to be speaking with the VR painter and sculptor, GiantSwan. Welcome to the Spotlight, Swan.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's really exciting to be here.
Cool. And I'll start off with the question that I ask everyone. Could you tell us who GiantSwan is? And then maybe tell us a little bit about your handle. Where does GiantSwan derive its meaning from?
Sure. So, GiantSwan it's me. It's a persona that I attach to inhabit the artist that I've always wanted to be. And it's a name that I pulled from my more emo days of listening to angsty music as a teenager. And there's this song, it's called GiantSwan, and it was terrible. I would beg all my friends to listen to it, and every time I tell them, guys, you got to listen to this song, it's amazing, they'd come back and they'd tell me how crap it was every time. And that was kind of like at a pivotal moment when you're growing up and stuff. I learned from this interaction with my friends that, you know what, I don't give a shit what you think about this song. This thing is a masterpiece, an absolutely trashy masterpiece. Do not look it up. But yeah, and ever since then, I decided that's what my art was going to be. It was going to be me, and I wouldn't betray that as much as possible. So I'm a VR artist. But what does that mean? I use tech to create art, just like everyone else. I'm using VR tools as a vessel to use my movement to create shapes. You put a headset on and you're in an empty room, right? You can see no floor, there's no sky, there isn't even a horizon. You just start with your hands floating in front of you. And from that point on, it's your movement. So I create all those shapes moving around a space, usually my bedroom or at my studio, looking quite silly. Music would be my main input very early on, and I use that to channel my movement and create a consistency to create a space. VR art has this like amazing potential where it's to prove itself as a medium. It's blended itself into other mediums, workflows. So a lot of my work that you guys get to see are stills, they're videos, they're VR pieces. They all kind of exist together. They're the same, but they're all different in how we perceive them.
Yeah, and I'm super excited to dive into your process and your work, which is, I mean, when I first came across it in December, I was just like, oh my God, what is it? I had not come across VR art prior to that. It was amazing. But before that, I kind of want to go back a little bit in time to your creative journey to becoming like this virtual reality artist. Like, when did you realize you're a creator? And then there's a question that Drago Nate asked on Scent, but like, when was that moment that you realized that VR is your canvas, your medium?
Oh man, what a story. So I've always been creative. You know, I grew up with parents that gave me a pen and pencil to keep me busy while they were doing whatever they were up to. Through high school, I was always that creative kid. When I got to university, I went to video games to, this is what I do. This is what I'll be good at. And I learned 3D tools there. And then I got out of university and I got a normal job. And for 7 years, I maybe put that on the back burner. That creative journey didn't really progress because I had grown up and I was told, look, you're creative, you're going to be an artist, you're going to make this stuff. But I never really envisioned it for myself. That was people projecting onto me. So I just did a normal job and I was really good at it. I was running logistics in a company that sells horse products. And man, I was good at it. Like I was moving hundreds of thousands of dollars of stock around. I was pretty responsible. I had short hair and a suit. I was a big sellout. And one day my friends invite me to a birthday party. He's rented out a VR arcade and we're going to play games. We're going to shoot each other in VR. And this is late 2016, maybe early 2017. And I go to this party and we have a blast, man, but far out. I don't know if you've ever seen early VR, but early VR multiplayer was shit. You were like floating triangles and you're like, oh, by the way, this is your laser, and you shoot the laser and they're like, it might work. We had a blast, but you hit kind of free time in that space because the multiplayer experiences they just weren't there yet. And at that point I knew, there's this thing called Tilt Brush. I want to try that. I've seen the YouTube videos. They did great with the mixed reality recording and bringing people into that. And I drew something and it was really natural for me because I've always thought in a 3D sense. Maybe I learned that at uni. Maybe I learned that when I was kind of dabbling in cosplay over that for whatever reason, like years and years ago. But I made something and I showed my friends, and I remember giving it to each one of them, and then their mouths just dropped. And I'd never had that reaction from people, like friends or family, from my art before, and they were blown away. One of my friends sat in it for a few minutes and came out and was like, whoa, I don't know what that is. And to be honest, I barely remember what it was. It was something that was big and large, and it kind of wrapped around you. And from that point on, I was like, all right, I need to get this. And I worked my ass off for the next year to get a PC and the VR headset and all that. And then we fast forward about that year later, and I finally got it. I'm making stuff, and I'm kind of exploring my process. I'm like, okay, I want to make these things. I want to make worlds. I want people to experience my art. But I didn't know what those were going to be. So I looked to music to influence me or really show, where should I go? Because these empty rooms kind of fill up, and then you make stuff. They inspire you and change your mood and stuff. So I was making videos to music and posting it to Instagram. After a few months, like my interest was in and out. Like I knew it was something, but I was a corporate sellout. You know, I spoke about horse jackets for most of the day. Like I didn't know how to progress into a career of art. I just knew I wanted to make something, and I found something that was really true. And then with that process with music, that was really comforting for me because I was like, cool, I've found where I put that energy now. Yeah, so a few months of that, and I'm at a gig, right? It's at the Corner Hotel in Melbourne. It's a famous pub where all the bands come through at some point in their careers. And I see these guys called the Smith Street Band, and I love them, man. Me and the boys, they sing these kind of anthemic songs. So it's a big sing along at their gigs. And we get drunk. We have a few beers. You spend the whole gig with your arm around someone you don't know, and you're belting out these songs. The gig's over, and we walk the street back to my house, and I've got a good buzz, and we're singing in the street. We're in a good mood. And I get home eventually, and I'm like, I still got this vibe. I'm going to jump in. And I drew some of their album art in VR, filmed it, and I put it on Instagram. And I tagged them and stuff, and left it at that. My friends were like, oh, dude, that thing you made was awesome. And yeah, a few of my friends in other bands are saying, oh, this would be a great way to make a video and whatever. A few months after that, I actually hear from that band, the one that we went and saw. They reach out and they're like, hey man, we saw the video you made and we really like it. And we've got Falls Festival coming up, and that's a 50,000 person festival hosted in multiple cities in Australia over New Year's Eve. And then everything was a whirlwind after that, man. 2 days later, I was at a park hanging out with my then favorite band, blowing my fucking mind. Just, hey man, we want you to make this. We just want you to do what you do. They gave me full control. And before I knew, I was in front of, like I had 100 views on this video, and then 50,000 people were watching my art with my favorite band playing. Oh man, it was insane. And it opened every door for me. It was like everything tapping me on the shoulder and going, hey man, you need to be doing this. People are connecting with it and they love it. And those guys have been really supportive ever since.
Was that the moment that you started to grow your hair out? Like literally and figuratively?
One thing about that corporate gig was I was always pretty vocal about that. I'd cut my hair for it. And man, when I left that job, I had so much support from my coworkers because they'd been telling me for years that I needed to get out and do something with my art. But yeah, man, like taking those steps, there was a lot of confusion around people. They were like, well, how are you going to do this? It's one gig. But I took a big risk and I got lucky because it just kept paying off, that band interacted with me, and then that greater community kind of trusted me with more gigs and enough to incentivize me to keep going. And the time demands were enough that it was either I did it or I didn't. So yeah, leaving that job and finding out, hey, this is where I'm going. This is my creative journey. And that's how it all kind of kicked off.
That's so cool. It almost seems like a Rolling Stone story, obviously, like rock and roll, VR art, like just living your dream. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And I know you're obviously still making VR art, but now you're in the crypto art world. We were talking before the show started about that transition happening like quite quickly and extremely recently. I think it would be interesting to kind of delve into that a little bit more. Like, how did you find out about crypto art? And then like, what has your experience been like since you joined just a couple months back?
Sure. So about a year ago, I had received a residency. So I was looking for funding and places I could grow as an artist. And I found a residency in the middle of the city at Chantilly Studios. They were kind enough to host me for 3 months where I would bring a project and work on it. They would pay for me to be there and all that. And in that kind of space, for anyone that's ever, you go into a new workplace or a new social space, you grow from that. You grow from new networking and people that are driven and this little hub, this garden of creative people in all sorts of industries. Two of them are heavily involved in blockchain work. They set up a platform for companies to come in and involve the blockchain integrating into their systems. So it didn't take long that we were having conversations about, hey, you should look at blockchaining your art. And they were showing me CryptoKitties as an example because that's the easiest one to explain at the time. They were showing me how the contracts work and all that stuff. And we put a little work into it. I found Known Origin and Super Rare at the time, but not a lot of stuff was moving, and it was really hard for me to justify chasing it because I was really hesitant about bringing my art to someone else's platform. I'm really passionate about controlling your platform, right? Like your art and your branding, they need to live with you as much as possible and not lean on other people's work. I guess I made a decision at that time where I was like, I don't think this is ready for me yet, or I'm not ready for it. And I didn't think I could bring enough to that space. Like my art is big and elaborate. It's heavy. It takes a lot to get it in a memory sense anyway. But yeah, over that year, David from Known Origin was reaching out and eventually I just took this step and I was like, all right, I'll give this a crack. You know, an artist's journey and being successful and stuff, I believe is all about generating opportunities and taking opportunities when you can, at least smart ones. And that's always worked for me. When I trust my gut, do the thing, do the next thing, open this door, what's in that room, you know. So I came into Known Origin, I think really late November, and I posted up a few stills. I'd worked out a way that I could bring my sculptures into to fit in onto their platform. It kind of forced me to look at my art and go like, okay, how can I interpret this as a still? And can I turn this into a process that's going to make me a bigger artist? So once I realized, hey, it wasn't going to cost me anything really to participate, it really lined up with my progression as an artist. I started posting on there, and yeah, then December happened. Yeah, I mean, like everyone in the crypto world, that's when the things went crazy, right? Like for me at the time, I had no idea. I was just like, whoa, Trevor, he sold this piece of art for a lot of money. I should definitely be in this space. And I had no idea what that meant. But looking back on it now, after all this exposure and time and that, I realized, wow, I was in the thick of it. You know, like I walked into the room at the right time and connected with a lot of good people. And that's where the crypto experience has been so rich for me. Early on, sure, people nab your piece is quite cheap and you don't know what it's worth, and you're just excited that people like your art. But man, like some of the messages I was getting were just, they really blew me away. People were not just spending currency or money on me. They were spending emotional time to justify that. And that was time that you don't get that sort of feedback in a Instagram comment often, you know, once a week or something. Or, you know, your friends and family, they'll always tell you these beautiful things, but you'll never register them like you do a stranger. And yeah, that's what hooked me into. I was like, wow, this is a real group of people. And all the collectors that spoke to me were amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. The crypto art community, it's such a rich community and like multiple senses of that expression. It's not just that folks are buying works for increasingly bigger sums, which is awesome. But like you mentioned, it's that full investment in the creator, sharing that feedback, like sharing the work all across these social media platforms, like being so proud to be connected, reaching out, and like sort of like what we're even doing right now, having these chats with one another. It's such an amazing space. It's amazing. And you did arrive at that perfect time. I remember seeing your Anomaly series over on Super Rare, and it was just like I mentioned before, it's like, whoa, a mind-blowing kind of discovery. And it was amazing to see other people in real time discover it as well. And focusing more on your work and your process now. I mean, you had your Anomaly series over on Known Origin. You had your Time series. That's where I was first able to collect your work. I got 12:35 p.m. Nice. I just like how you name your work like that in that particular series. And then you have other sort of still portraits of these like virtual statues or creatures, they're cool. And then recently it seems like you've been working on, I kind of describe them as these rich poetic scenes. You have amazing descriptions of these just incredibly vivid and rich looking other worlds. I'm just curious, like when you mentioned that you put on the headset, you have your tilt brush and you're in this like, empty space. How do you actually go about creating your work? Is it something that you have in your mind's eye that you're then recreating? Are you listening to whatever music or song you have on and vibing with that? Are you trying to take a snapshot of something? I'm very curious to hear about this.
Yeah, so I mean, there's heaps to. Thank you for all these kind words, firstly. But each series that you kind of mentioned there, they have a different story behind them. The Anomaly series are explorations of cool ideas and my journey to animate. I actually had a lot of that work ready to go. Once I realized that the crypto stuff was worth going into, I had to look at that work and I was like, right, how can I get this to this crowd? Because people were giving me such great feedback and connecting emotionally. I brought that Anomaly series into a GIF format, which forced me to manipulate what I'd made to fit it in. It really broke down my process for me in these grander spaces. And basically, I'll be thinking of a character or a feeling, and I'll challenge myself to, look, I want to make someone who's feeling this way and to build that being. And they won't always have anything yet, because they'll be their own scale until you add something next to it. Then scale is needed. So when they become a place, it's me moving around the space, moving myself around the space, and placing things. Like establishing the ground sounds like a creative process, but it's a need as well, right? I have a person who's standing. What are they standing on? My whole process is asking myself questions and answering them visually. So some of those recent videos, I've made this cool character. What are they doing? Why are they there? And I explore it that way as visually as I can. Once they're all sculpted and built, a lot of my camera work is very exploring, right? Because I make these massive places. And for me in VR, and I'm sure at some point in the future you're going to experience them, but they are at a 1-to-1 scale, right? So those people are people-sized. And I'm looking crazy around it next to a tree. I'm looking up the tree. I'm looking sideways or down, whatever. And I've created something from that perspective to be experienced from there. But once you have a camera, you can explore it more. So it's like holding a handy cam in the scene. And I basically glide my hand around, and I'm doing it now on the microphone. And I'm like, it's like like how you hold a paper airplane, right? And how you imagine it flying through a space. That's how I explore it. And I use that window to look, and I'm like, okay, this is working. This matches the feeling here. This is a reveal, and an exercise, maybe influence from popular culture and video games and stuff. Of like, I don't have any training in video creating. I just absorb and release. So like, that's where that comes from. The writing stuff, I'm not a writer. I'm borderline dyslexic. I think everyone on my friends list ever has received some garbled up message from me. But there's a frustration. Well, maybe it's not frustration. Maybe it kind of ties back to my main goal as an artist, right? I want people to feel like I've shared a dream with them. And I want to give people not a definitive piece of art or anything to hey, this is a cup. This is the cup that holds water. I don't want to tell people that. I want people to look at something and have different components and go, I think this is a cup with water. I'd rather them have that experience. And I think that comes from working backwards in my creative journey, going, oh, you can experience my art. Wow. And now I'm putting that into my videos and my stills and stuff. And that's where the writing comes from. It's just another piece of the puzzle where there's no correct answer for that puzzle. There's no actual complete state. It's just, how do you fit them together? And how does that make you feel? If you get that far, I'm pretty stoked.
That's so fascinating. And well, you kind of touched on this, and this is something that I've been curious about. Another artist, Spherical Art, was very curious about this point. But is it possible for fans or collectors to kind of go inside of your work? This is kind of a separate question, but I think related. I don't know if you listened to my conversation with Matt Kane, but he's building out this whole separate site for collector experiences, for his collectors to experience the work that they're purchasing from him on a deeper, more richer level. And like, looking at your work, it just feels like that is like the next kind of step for collectors to kind of go inside of these pieces, because like you said, the figures that you're creating, they're a 1-to-1 match, like with real life individuals, which is crazy to think about. And it puts the viewer in this, it makes them go into this whole other perspective and mind space. But like, have you thought about building those experiences out for your collectors, to go inside of your works?
Without a doubt, that is the destination for my work. I am running parallel where I'm trying to grow in the real world, I suppose, showing and exhibitions and stuff. And one thing that I'm in desperate need of is completing exhibition builds of my work. And that's been a long-term goal since, like a year and a half ago. So with the revelation of connecting with collectors via the crypto arts, suddenly I'm preparing to create worlds that people can access with their tokens. But there's all sorts of little things you need to think about. Yeah, like, can I justify creating a whole world for someone that only one person can see? And can I grow from that as an artist? Like, everyone can view an image or GIF. So I can't really just hand the keys over to one scene that no one will ever see. So I'm looking at a way to deploy my art, but also fulfill the experience of ownership. There's a few ideas floating around, and when it comes to coding, I mean, that's not my strength, so it's a bit slow. I get to do that in my R&D time when I can self-fund. It's a pretty artist living isn't the most the easiest to find that time, but yeah, in between, that's exactly where we're going, and collaborating with the right people is probably how I'll get there. I'm looking at a whole new website revamp where people can come in and experience those worlds vividly on their own in a little package. They can download it and check that out. I think in terms of ownership, yeah, man, it's a discussion that, like, I bring up with some of my collectors all the time. It's like, what would it be cool if there was like a guest book, or when you enter this world, maybe hand over that power to the collectors. I'm not sure, but yeah, I couldn't think of anything more amazing for me as an artist to give someone a place. Like I said earlier, my goal is to give people art that feels like we've shared a dream. And if you've ever experienced VR, it is 100% the way to do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And well, I mean, there's so many different places we could go. But kind of pulling back to a more macro level of like the crypto art scene, looking at the platforms themselves, we mentioned Super Rare and Known Origin. As a creator who's selling work on these platforms, the first part of the question is like, how do you see these different platforms in terms of the distinct benefits that they offer? And then related to that, I know earlier on you were publishing editions of your work on Known Origin. It seems like now, regardless of where you're publishing it, they're one of ones. They're the super rares. I'm just wondering how do you think about the distinction between like editions and one of ones, as well as how you think about the differences between the platforms themselves?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm on Super Rare and Known Origin at the moment, with an async launch in the next few days, which is also exciting.
Boom. That's so cool. I'm so excited. Yeah. I love No Shot and Common and Breadbreaker. They're awesome folks.
Oh man, yeah. They've been really welcoming to the idea that Frenetic and I came to them with. So yeah, I'm so excited to see that go out there. But yeah, the platforms I'm on right now and editioning and stuff, I guess as an artist who is growing in this space, I guess your goal is to connect with as many creators as collectors as possible, and participate where you can. I think it's really great to have one or two of like the big whales or something to be following you is great. But ultimately, they're invested in your work. They'll never be more invested than they already are. They're always going to appreciate it this much. And that's not, that's a wonderful thing to have and cherish. But the idea is to grow your audience at all times. And in this space, I think it's growing your collectors, your pool of collectors. I'm often at odds because Known Origin was amazing. They always treat me so well, man. Like they look after me coming into the space. They've promoted me to no end and probably really elevated my presence to others, and that's been fantastic. But I have to look at like my current situation and things like that, and it's often a chasing of all right, where are the collectors this week? Where can I fill a gap in where there isn't any noise, and where can I cut through and show, hey, I'm still here, I can do this, hey, and kind of just rock around. So sometimes I'll commit to doing like a series on each platform. It feels like ages since I've been on KO, and that's probably, like sometimes you mint something and it just doesn't go anywhere, right? So like I got to do that first video that the gym bought for 10F. Like, I'm so glad I was asleep for that. Like I would have had a heart attack if that email came through when I was out and about. And it was awesome, like video is great to mint with this richer experience. There's more colors, you can make it high res. It's pretty cool. But and then like I do another one and then it just doesn't kind of go anywhere, and you need to be kind of tactile. Yeah, you can't commit to one space just because you love it. So yeah, I flip between the two. Making ones, I guess, compared to editions, it comes down to that, like getting more collectors. So what's getting me on the radar of other collectors is a question I'll ask. If I make 5 of this, can I move 5 of that? I'm not sure, because you put off the guys that only want ones, they might not touch it. And then if you've only been selling to those guys, maybe the people that are okay with editions aren't going to see your work because you're just not on their radar anymore. There's a few things to consider, and the way I kind of get to that, I just talk to people. I go straight to my collectors. I go, hey guys, what do you think of this? Because they have a great vision on that sort of stuff, and I don't follow social media probably as much as I should. It's not good for me. I'm fiercely competitive sometimes, so I've got to be really careful with where I go. But yeah, I think I just try to give a rich experience. Yeah. And if it's a one, that's usually led to the richest interactions with collectors afterwards too.
Mm-hmm. That totally makes sense. And then, well, looking at the world of VR, now that everyone is like self-isolating and quarantine is like spreading all around the world, where do you see like virtual reality worlds going? It's in CryptoVoxels or Decentraland, Somnium Space? And then the other part of the question is like, where do you see your creative journey unfolding in this future that seems to be really aligning the world to head into these virtual reality worlds?
Yeah, so we kind of touched on this earlier. My art, you could argue it belongs in VR. I'm not sure. I think it does. I think there is a richer experience that I'm not able to give you right now without me being there with my headset. And I want to bridge that gap. That's where I envision my art going. I envision not being the barrier to accessing my art. Even in when I have to represent myself and go to an exhibition, I'm still the barrier to that experience. I'm putting the headset on people because it's my kid on the line and all that. That's my ultimate goal for this year. But does that change what my presence is in here? I don't think it does, because making video and stills is like, it's not a cop out or a lesser version of what I create. It's a version that you can understand in a different way. And it gives you an opportunity to experience, from an image. I pick a perspective and I give you, just like everyone else, the tools to experience an image and a story or whatever. In a video, I get to show you that in an order. And in VR, you get to decide where you're going to look. You have, suddenly the audience has this, they create an experience. They say, oh, I went there. You don't really say, oh, I saw this picture. That's what your experience is, right? In VR, you're like, I went to this place, and I want people to have that. So is that in crypto voxels and stuff like that? I don't think so. Not for me anyway. And maybe that's me being stuffy. Maybe that's something I need to explore and then go solo, because people deserve, like the time that people give my art, they deserve to go into it. I recently showed in my city for the first time before all the events shut down. Lucky me. And I was at this big event, and one of the coolest things that happened there, I was walking to the bar, and I spoke to someone. I'm like, hey, how you going? Because the whole event was like to speak to artists and stuff. And she's like, yeah, I'm good. Oh yeah, just having lunch. And I just bought this print. She held up one of my anomaly pieces, the one in the alley.
Whoa.
And I looked at it because we had like a print store separate from where the art, or where my art was. So she'd already seen this piece and connected with it without me. And I just I must have gone white, because I was like, you need to visit where I am. You don't understand what you've just bought. And she came back past like two hours later, and I had it set up and put her in the space. I gave her a seat and headphones so she could block out all the noise. And she came out in tears, man. Like,
wow.
She'd already made this emotional journey without me, because I didn't have to, hey, this is my work, it's in VR, I make it with my movement. It's like, she didn't have any of that. She'd already absorbed the story and stuff on her own, and then she got to go there. And that was enough that she came back 2 days later with her housemate, and she's like, you have to see the thing that I got. And that just really reaffirms how much it adds to be able to do that with art. Another thing that was really cool, and it happened at the same event, was this disabled guy who had no movement. I don't actually know what he was suffering from, but he was clear that he didn't have many motor functions at all. And his carer came up to me and asked if he could put the headset on. And I asked her, hey, can he put the headset on? I don't know. But she said, yeah, he'll be fine. His eyes are fine. He can look around. So we cleared the space, and I quickly got a scene up, and we put him in. And I was holding up his headset because it's pretty heavy with all my custom stuff on it. And we wheeled him through, and his right hand's flicking around. And his carer looks at his hand, and she starts spelling out what he's doing. Because he's signing to her. That's how he communicates with her. And he's gone WOWBLUE and PINK. And he was describing what he could see. And I realized then, after speaking to thousands of people, like, I'm communicating with people in this way, in ways that I didn't even think you could. Like, there's no way I could have communicated with that guy any other way. I could have spoken to him and he'd understand me. He wasn't deaf. But like, I would have never been able to communicate or receive any sort of feedback from him. Like, it was really emotional, really special. Someone took a photo of us. I'm still hunting that photo down. But man, just like that opportunity though for people to travel and visit, experience, that's it's really powerful stuff. It's more powerful than anything I could make. But damn it, I'm gonna try.
I'm like, dude, I'm so excited for like these deepening experiences that you're gonna help build out, and just like the connections that your work and like all of this is creating with your collectors and people that are stumbling upon it that otherwise wouldn't have existed. It's a sign, I think, of what's happening in the broader space, which is, it's amazing, right? You're having all these connections that are forming and coming together, and the collaborations that I think will spill out from that are super, super exciting. The last question I always ask, one of the special features, I think, of this space is the fact that a lot of creators are also collectors, and collectors are also creators, and kind of there's this awesome intermingling amongst everyone, scooping everyone else's work. So I'm curious though, like, who are you collecting? If we opened up your crypto wallet, like, which works of rare digital art are we going to find, and which ones do you prize the most?
Oh my goodness, that's a terrible question. I well, I'll just say it. I don't have anybody's art.
That's interesting. Why?
Well, I love everyone's work, and my taste is way too expensive.
I hear that. I hear that.
It's a weird experience for me. I don't know. I've connected with a lot of artists, like I mentioned earlier, connecting with Frenetic and people like Xcopy and Hakateo. They're amazing. Those guys have been so supportive of everything that I do. Like, even when I was a weekend, before I even sold anything, Xcopy had my back, dude. He was really helpful. Coldy was amazing early on. A bunch of people gave me so much time, and I think I really put so much of my art in woods that I hadn't gone out of my way to collect other people's art. It's weird. I don't think it's a negative decision that I make. I think it's just kind of wary and not always sure where to collect. I don't want to make a statement with my first one now. Like, keep an eye out. Yeah, I mean, you'll know if it's oh shit, like, it's going to be special. But now it's like I've dug a hole. I should have got on board a lot earlier.
So actually, I mean, it's not negative at all. And a couple months back, I was speaking with Urban, the lens-based artist who had just popped on the scene with his crazy, mind-blowing physical work where he's dropping oils and water and filming that. And just, I don't know, I kind of dig that. But he had not started collecting at that time either. And I kind of put out a warning to him. I was like, if you do start, be careful. It is addicting as fuck. It's crazy. And especially since you mentioned earlier how competitive you can get, like, the bidding wars are no joke. Like, once you get locked in there, it's bye-bye. So, I mean, it's awesome. It's an amazing thing, but like it's really interesting how addictive it can be and competitive. And I feel like a lot of folks, before they jump in there, they don't necessarily realize that. But when you are in there, you're like, oh, okay, I get why the art world and like these bidding wars and why these auction houses have been like so successful throughout history, like over the past several hundred of years, because of that competitive and addictive aspect. So it's not an issue, but just be careful.
Yeah, it's definitely something I reckon I would be quite susceptible to. I do try my best to keep an eye on new artists and stuff coming through and try to go out of my way to connect with them and put back into the community that way where I can. But yeah, oh man, I'm going to be thinking about that for the rest of the day now, I think. I'm going to go buy someone's art.
Yeah, and well, heading to the end of this, before we go, I just want to make sure that we shout out all your channels. I know obviously you're on Super Rare, you're on Known Origin, you're also on Scent, but let the folks know where else they should check you out, like your website or anything like that, so we can plug everything that needs to be
I
plugged.
guess for the crypto world, man, if you haven't seen my Instagram, you probably haven't seen half my art. That's where I got my big start from. You can catch me there on @GiantSwan. And a lot of it's a space where I learned how to communicate with people online through my art the best way. And it's just another social platform, but it's also where I put a lot of me and a lot of personal, like you can scroll through that and see that journey of me opening up from drawing robots every day to really getting into, however I'm feeling or something.
That's awesome. And well, Swan, it was a pleasure to be able to finally hop on the phone with you and dig into everything that you're creating and the dream spaces that you're creating for people to enter and dream their own thoughts about your work. It's awesome. And I'm sure this is just the first conversation of many, I hope, that we'll be able to have as you head forward on your creative journey. Well, thank you once again for your time, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, it's Matthew again, and I hope you enjoyed my conversation with GiantSwan as much as I did recording it. If you haven't already, make sure that you're subscribed to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts at. And if you have some friends whom you think will enjoy conversations like this, make sure you recommend this episode to them as well. My next couple of spotlights will be on some awesome creators, as always. Hackatao and Art by Mutrai are two that are in the queue. With Hackatao, it'll be an interesting arrangement. I'll be speaking with their personal curator, Eleonora, who I'll be asking questions that I've already shared with Hackatao, who has in turn shared their responses with Eleonora, because their time is so dear and because of potential language constraints. So I hope everyone is still staying safe. I know it can be quite boring remaining at home, maintaining social distances from your friends and loved ones. So keep hanging in there. And until next week, sent on.
Sent podcast. Sent podcast. Sent podcast. Sent podcast.